The warrior's arrival. The crystal gates of the alien palace opened with a heavy sound, their surface glowing with strange light as if the walls themselves were alive. Guards in silver armor stepped aside, their eyes filled with doubt, and in the middle of their perfect order walked a man, a human warrior. His boots echoed on the shining floor, each step slow but steady. The alien crowd whispered as he passed, their voices sharp with laughter and disbelief. "Is this the warrior from Earth?" One alien noble hissed, his voice dripping with mockery. "He looks weak, so small, so fragile," another said, covering her mouth as she laughed. The human warrior did not answer, his face calm, his eyes hard like stone. He carried no crown, no banner, only the scars on his skin and the weight of battles carved into his soul. At the far end of the great hall, the alien queen sat on her throne, tall, regal, her eyes glowing with wisdom older than centuries. Beside her stood her daughter, the princess, her beauty sharp as a blade, her long silver hair shining like moonlight. She leaned close to her mother and whispered, though her voice was loud enough for all to hear, "Mother, this is the human they call a warrior. He looks like a servant, not a fighter." The court exploded with laughter, the sound bouncing off the crystal walls. Nobles pointed at the man, shaking their heads. But he did not flinch. His silence was heavier than their noise, his gaze fixed. On the throne, the princess stepped forward, her lips curled in a cruel smile. She raised her hand and circled the human as if he were some strange animal, her words sharp. "Tell me, human, what wars have you fought? Against children? Against wind?" The warrior finally lifted his head. His eyes met hers, dark and unshaken. His voice came out calm, slow, carrying weight. "I have fought wars where the ground itself burned, where the sky rained fire, where men screamed and fell and I was the last to stand. I have fought battles you cannot imagine, princess." The laughter died for a moment, the air heavy with his words, but the princess refused to let go. She laughed again, her voice ringing like glass breaking. "Big words for such a small body. Maybe you should prove yourself, unless your stories are all lies." The queen watched in silence, her sharp eyes studying every movement, her expression unreadable. But deep within her gaze was something more, something no one else noticed. The warrior stood tall, his hands by his side. He made no move to draw a weapon. His voice carried across the hall again. "Strength is not in words nor in size. It is in the will to stand even when the world falls. I do not need to prove myself with tricks," the court murmured, some mocking, some silent, unsure now, but the princess only laughed louder. "Then you are afraid, human, afraid to show what you really are." The warrior looked at her, and for the first time, his lips curved slightly. Not a smile of joy, but a smile filled with something sharper, something that made her heartbeat stumble. "I am not afraid, princess, but one day you will learn who I am. And when that day comes, you will not laugh." The words struck her like a blade, and though she tossed her hair back with arrogance, her eyes flickered with confusion she could not hide. The queen finally raised her hand, silencing the court, her voice calm but carrying power that filled the hall. "Enough," she said, her gaze fixed not on her daughter, but on the human. "He has come, and he will face the trial. Only then will we see what kind of warrior stands before us." The court fell silent, the whispers replaced by tension. Guards shifted, nobles leaned forward, and the princess crossed her arms. Her laughter now locked behind her lips, but her eyes still burned with pride and defiance. The human warrior bowed his head slightly, not in weakness but in respect, his silence once again heavier than any roar. And in that moment, though mocked and laughed at, though called weak and small, he stood like a mountain, unshaken, unbroken, and the court, for the first time, felt a shadow of doubt creep into their laughter, because sometimes silence itself is the loudest voice, and the human's silence promised one thing. Something was coming, something they could not stop. Ending hook for next part. The princess thinks she has humiliated the human, but the queen's command of a trial will soon test his strength. and the truth waiting beneath his scars is something no one in the hall is ready to face. The great hall had not yet settled. The sound of laughter still echoed faintly against the crystal walls. The princess stood tall, her eyes shining with pride. She thought the human warrior's silence was weakness, a sign that he was nothing but a fool in her mother's court. She stepped closer to him again, circling him like a predator around prey, her long silver gown brushed against the floor, her words sharp and filled with scorn. Look at him, everyone. He doesn't even defend himself. A warrior who cannot speak is no warrior at all. The nobles erupted in fresh laughter, their jeweled hands clapping softly. One old lord leaned forward and added, "Perhaps he is not a warrior, but a servant who lost his way. Maybe he came to beg for food and found himself here." The court laughed harder, the sound rising like a storm. But the human stood unmoving, his silence like iron. The princess tilted her head, her smile cruel. "Tell us, human, what do you eat on your little world? Roots? Dust? Perhaps that is why you are so thin," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. The warrior finally lifted his gaze to hers, and for a brief second, she felt her chest tighten. His eyes were not the eyes of a weakling. They were eyes of fire, eyes that had seen death and survived it. Still, she pushed the feeling away. "Do not look at me like that," she snapped, though her voice trembled faintly. "You think your stare can frighten me? I am daughter of a queen. No human glare will ever bend me." The court cheered her words, but the warrior's voice finally broke the noise, steady and calm. "I do not wish to frighten you, princess. I only wish you to know that not everything is as weak as you believe." His words were simple, but they silenced the hall for a heartbeat, and that silence made the princess uneasy. She clenched her fists, her pride burning. "Then prove it," she shouted suddenly, her voice loud, echoing against the crystal throne. "Show us you are not just a shadow in armor. Show us you have the strength you claim." Her challenge drew gasps from the nobles. Some leaned forward eagerly, others shook their heads in disbelief. The queen, still seated on her high throne, raised her hand slightly, her expression calm, but her eyes glowed with strange knowledge. She spoke softly. "My daughter, do not waste your breath on games." But the princess refused to listen, her pride boiling higher. "No, mother, let him show himself, let him prove he is more than empty words." The queen's eyes lingered on the human, her lips pressed in silence. She seemed to recognize something in him, but she said no more. The human warrior finally moved slow and steady. His hand brushed the hilt of his weapon but did not draw it. His voice came out low, filled with weight. "I do not fight for entertainment, princess. I fight only when there is need. But if you demand a trial, then so be it." The court stirred with excitement, whispers spread like fire. "A trial, yes, let him face it. Let the human show his true form." The princess smirked, her eyes flashing with triumph. She thought she had trapped him. "Good," she said coldly. "Then you will face my mother's chosen warriors, and we will see if your silence hides strength or only shame." The queen finally stood, her tall figure shining under the palace lights. Her voice rolled across the chamber, calm yet heavy. "So, it will be. The human will face a trial of strength, only then will his worth be known." The nobles bowed their heads. The guards stiffened, the air grew tense. The princess leaned close once more, her voice sharp, meant only for him. "You will fall, human, and when you do, your silence will no longer matter. Your pride will shatter before my people." The warrior's gaze did not waver, his tone steady. "Perhaps, princess, or perhaps when this trial ends, you will no longer laugh." The words cut through her pride, striking deeper than she expected, and though she turned away with a proud smile, her heart gave a small, uncertain tremor. The queen lowered herself back into her throne, her eyes still locked on the human, and for the first time, the princess noticed something strange. Her mother was not mocking him, not even questioning him. Instead, her gaze was filled with something else, something the princess could not understand. The court slowly began to clear, guards moving into place to prepare the coming trial. The laughter that had filled the hall faded, replaced by whispers and nervous talk. But deep inside the princess's chest, the echo of his words remained. And though she told herself she would laugh again, A seed of doubt had been planted, a seed she could not shake. The crystal hall shifted as the queen's command echoed through the court. Guards moved quickly, their armor clashing as they prepared the arena. The nobles whispered in excitement, some betting openly, others smiling with cruel delight. Everyone believed the human warrior would fall. At the center of the hall, the floor shifted, opening wide into a circle carved with glowing runes. It was the trial ground, a place where warriors of the alien race proved their strength. No one had ever seen a human stand in that circle before. The princess stood proudly near her mother, her eyes locked on the human. She folded her arms and whispered to herself, "He will break in minutes, and then all will know I was right." But the queen's face stayed unreadable, her eyes calm as if she already knew the outcome. The human warrior stepped into the circle, his movements steady, his boots thudding softly against the rune-carved stone. He looked neither afraid nor proud. His silence still carried weight, and that weight made the whispers of the court uneasy. The queen raised her hand, her voice clear. 3 champions will face the human, one after another. If he falls, he fails. If he stands through them all, he will be judged worthy. A roar of approval filled the chamber. Nobles cheered. Guards slammed their spears to the ground. The first champion entered, a tall alien warrior with scaled skin and glowing red eyes. His weapon was a long spear tipped with energy. He smirked at the human. "This will be quick," he promised. The fight began. The champion lunged forward, spear cutting the air, fast, deadly. The crowd gasped at his speed. But the human moved with calm precision. His body twisted just enough, the spear missed. The warrior's hand snapped forward, grabbing the shaft, and with a sudden pull, the alien stumbled. Before anyone could react, the human twisted the spear from his hand and tossed it aside. The alien crashed to the ground, groaning in pain. The court went silent. Disbelief spread across their faces, and the princess blinked, her smirk vanishing for a moment. The queen spoke again. "First champion has fallen, bring the next." The second warrior entered, bigger than the first, his armor thick, his fists wrapped with glowing metal. He roared as he charged, the ground shaking with each step. The human did not move until the last second. Then he stepped aside, his hand striking the alien's back with force. The giant stumbled, turned, and swung wildly. The human ducked, his movements sharp, practiced, each motion telling a story of countless battles fought. Finally, with one clean strike, the human slammed his elbow into the alien's chest. The giant dropped to his knees, breathless. The court gasped again. The laughter that once filled the air was gone, replaced by uneasy silence. The princess clenched her jaw, her pride burning hotter. "No, he cannot win again," she whispered under her breath. The queen's eyes never left the human, her hands folded calmly on her throne, her lips pressed together as if hiding words. The third and final champion stepped forward, the strongest of them all, a blade in each hand, his face carved with scars. His presence alone made the air heavy. The crowd cheered for him, desperate to see the human fall. This time the battle was longer, faster. The alien slashed his blades again and again, sparks flying as the human blocked with his forearms and shifted aside. The clash filled the chamber. With sharp echoes, the human bled, a cut across his arm. But his eyes did not waver. He fought with calm control, each movement measured, each step firm. And then, with sudden force, he trapped the alien's wrist, twisted, and slammed him onto the stone floor. The final champion groaned in defeat, his weapons clattering across the glowing runes. The court fell into stunned silence, the sound of disbelief louder than cheers could ever be. The human stood at the center of the circle, breathing heavy but unbroken. 3 champions had fallen, and he still stood. The princess's eyes widened, her laughter gone, her heart racing with confusion and anger. How could this fragile-looking human defeat her people's best? The queen finally rose from her throne, her voice calm yet carrying weight that silenced the whispers completely. "He has stood against the trial. He is no shadow, no servant. He is a warrior." The nobles bowed their heads reluctantly, some still unwilling to believe, others staring at the human with new fear. The princess, however, clenched her fists, her pride broken, yet deep inside her chest, Something else stirred. Something she refused to name. The human warrior lifted his head, his eyes sweeping across the hall. He said nothing, his silence once again heavier than any victory cry. But in the Queen's eyes, there was recognition, as if the battle had not just proven his strength, but revealed something more, something hidden. The chamber was still, the laughter of nobles gone like dust in the wind. The glowing runes on the trial floor slowly dimmed, leaving only the heavy silence of shock. 3 champions had fallen, and yet the human warrior still stood, his chest rising and falling with steady breath, his eyes sharp and unbroken. The princess stared at him, her lips parted but no sound came out. Her pride had told her he would fall. Her heart had promised her victory in his defeat, but now she felt only confusion, a storm of emotions she could not explain. The Queen slowly rose from her throne, her long gown flowing like rivers of light behind her. She lifted her hand and the crowd bowed their heads. Her voice rolled across the hall, calm and powerful. The trial is complete. The human has stood where others thought he would fall. His strength is not of words alone, but of spirit, and no one here can deny it, the nobles murmured. Some lowering their eyes, some whispering angrily, others still in disbelief, but none dared to challenge the Queen's word. The princess, however, could not remain silent. She stepped forward, her silver hair catching the light, her voice sharp. Mother, this is madness. How can you praise him? He is a stranger, a human. He should never have stood in this hall. He does not belong to us. The Queen turned her gaze upon her daughter, and for a moment the hall seemed to freeze. Her eyes were cold, sharp, but beneath them burned something deeper, something heavy with memory. You speak too boldly, my child, the Queen said softly, yet her words struck like steel. You mock what you do not understand. You laugh at what you cannot see. The princess frowned, her pride trembling under her mother's voice. Then explain. Mother, why do you defend him? What is this human to you? The Queen was silent for a long moment, her lips pressed together, her gaze fixed on the warrior. The court leaned forward, sensing something strange, something hidden. At last, the Queen raised her hand and motioned to the human. Step forward, she commanded. The warrior obeyed, his footsteps steady, each echo making the nobles shift uneasily. He stopped before the throne, his head slightly lowered, but his eyes never wavered. The Queen looked at her daughter, then at the warrior, her voice heavy with weight. Look at him, my child, look closely, do you not see it? The princess blinked, confused. She looked at his face, at his strong jaw, at the way he stood, the way his eyes burned like fire. Her heart skipped. Something familiar stirred deep inside her, something she could not name. No, she whispered, shaking her head. He is nothing. He is human. He is... Look again. The Queen cut her off, her voice sharp. Look at his eyes, the way he carries himself, the shape of his stance. Do you not see the reflection of your own blood? The hall gasped, nobles whispering, some covering, their mouths in shock. The princess's breath caught in her throat. Her heart pounded. What are you saying, mother? She demanded, her voice trembling for the first time. The Queen's gaze softened, but her words carried thunder. I am saying what must be said, though you may not wish to hear it. This man, this warrior, he is not only a stranger in our hall, he is not only a human in our world. The Queen paused. The silence stretched. The court leaned in. The princess's eyes widened. He is your father, the Queen declared, her voice shaking the chamber. Like a storm, gasps filled the hall. Nobles stepped back in disbelief. The princess froze, her body rigid, her eyes wide as if the ground beneath her had shattered. Her lips trembled, words refused to come. She stared at the human warrior, the same man she had mocked, the same man she had laughed at, and now she saw it. His eyes, his stance, his presence. It all mirrored a piece of her she never understood. The warrior lowered his head, his voice soft but filled with weight. I did not come to mock or to rule. I came because the truth cannot stay hidden forever. The princess stumbled back, her chest tight, her voice breaking. No, this cannot be true. He cannot be. But the Queen's voice cut her again, firm, final. He is, child, he is your blood, your flesh, your father, and no laughter can change that. The hall was silent, the weight of truth crushing every whisper. The princess's hands trembled, her pride shattered into dust, her heart torn between anger, denial, and something else she could not control. And in that moment, the warrior's silence became more terrifying than any battle because it carried not just strength, but truth. Ending hook for next part. The princess's world has shattered. Her laughter gone, the queen's truth revealed. But will she accept the human as her father, or reject him with rage that may destroy them all? The queen's words echoed through the great hall like thunder rolling across the sky. He is your father. The sentence did not fade quickly. It hung in the air, heavy, sharp, cutting into every heart present. The princess stood frozen, her lips parted but no words escaped. Her silver eyes wide with disbelief, she shook her head slowly, refusing to let the meaning sink in. No, you are lying, mother. This cannot be true. Her voice cracked, trembling between anger and fear. The nobles gasped and whispered, their perfect order broken by shock. Some stepped back as if the truth itself carried danger. Others stared at the human warrior with new uneasy respect. The human lowered his head, his silence heavy, but his eyes revealed the storm inside him. His voice finally broke through, calm but filled with sorrow. I did not wish for this to be spoken here in front of all, but truth does not wait for the right moment. It comes when it must. The princess's chest tightened, her breath shallow. She remembered her lonely childhood, how she grew up with whispers of a father who never came, a shadow in her heart she never understood. Now that shadow had taken form, standing before her, human, silent, unbroken. You cannot be him. She hissed, taking a step back, her hands trembling. My father was strong, proud, a warrior. Not, her voice broke. Not a human. The queen's voice cut across her words, firm and final. Your father was a warrior, stronger than any you have seen, and his blood flows in your veins whether you wish it or not. The princess turned sharply toward her mother, her pride wounded, her heart torn. Why did you never tell me? Why hide this all my life? The queen's eyes softened, though her tone remained steady. Because truth is not always a gift, sometimes it is a burden. You were too young to bear it, and the world was not ready for it. But now, it can no longer be hidden. The princess's eyes filled with tears she fought to hide. Her pride screamed at her not to show weakness, but her heart could no longer deny the fire burning inside. The same fire she saw in the human warrior's eyes. The human finally spoke again, his voice heavy with regret. I was taken from this world, torn from you before I could stand by your side, not by choice but by fate and war. I fought to return, but time is cruel, and when I finally could, it was too late. The court grew silent, every ear leaning closer. Nobles who once mocked him now stood frozen, their arrogance broken. The princess's voice shook, anger lacing every word. Too late? Too late to claim me now? Where were you when I needed you? Where were you when I cried for a father I never had? Her words pierced the hall like arrows, but the human did not flinch, his voice steady. I was fighting to stay alive, fighting to one day see you again. Every scar on my body carries the weight of battles I fought, not for glory, but for the hope that one day I could return to the blood I left behind. For a moment the princess felt her heart weaken, her anger battling with something deeper. Pain, longing, the ache of years without a father. She wanted to scream, to deny, yet part of her wanted to believe, wanted to accept. The queen placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder, her eyes heavy with wisdom. You see, child, he is not just a warrior of earth, he is part of you and you are part of him. You can reject him with your pride, but you cannot erase what he is to you. The princess turned away, her hands gripping her gown tightly, her body trembling. She whispered through clenched teeth, I mocked him, I laughed at him, and all this time. Her voice cracked. He was my father. The human stepped closer, his voice softer now. Mockery does not wound me, daughter. I endured worse than words. What wounds me is the years we lost, the years I could not hold you, teach you, stand beside you. The court, once filled with laughter, now felt like a tomb. The weight of truth pressed down on every soul. Nobles avoided each other's eyes, guards shifted uneasily. The princess slowly turned back, her tears finally falling, her voice breaking. Then tell me, why did you remain silent? When I mocked you, when I called you weak, why did you not tell me who you were? The human met her gaze, his eyes filled with both pain and pride. Because, daughter, I wanted to see you stand strong. I wanted to see the fire in you, even if it burned against me. I needed to know you could face the world without fear. The princess gasped softly, her chest tightening, his words striking deep into her heart. Zui. Queen looked between them, her voice soft but carrying weight. The truth is out. The question now is not what he is, but what you will do. The hall grew still, all eyes on the princess, her pride and her heart locked in battle, her breath trembling as she faced the man she once mocked, now revealed. As the father she never knew, the hall was still heavy with silence. Every noble's whisper had faded after the queen's revelation. He is your father. The words had shattered the princess's pride and shaken the foundation of her heart, but now in that silence a new war began, one not fought with weapons but inside her soul. She turned away from the throne, her silver hair swinging like a blade, her footsteps sharp as she moved across the hall, her voice trembling with anger. No, I will not accept this. I cannot. How can he be my father when he was never here? Her voice cracked, and though her words were filled with defiance, her eyes glistened with tears she could no longer hide. The nobles stared in shock, some expecting her to fall to her knees, others waiting for her to strike out in fury. But she only walked, fast, unsteady, until she reached the far end of the hall. The human warrior did not chase her. He stood where he was, his chest rising slowly with heavy breaths, his silence more painful than any answer. His eyes followed her, but his feet did not move. The queen's gaze softened as she watched her daughter's trembling back. She knew this struggle could not be solved by her command, nor by the warrior's strength. It was a war of the heart, and only the princess could fight it. The princess pressed her hands against the cold crystal wall, her heart racing, her mind replaying every moment. She saw herself mocking him, laughing at his silence, calling him weak. She remembered the way he had endured her cruelty without breaking, and now she knew why. Tears ran down her cheeks, hot and heavy. Why? She whispered into the empty air, her voice trembling. Why did it have to be him? Why did it have to be a human? Her pride screamed inside her. She was the daughter of a queen, heir to an empire of warriors. How could her blood be tied to an outsider? How could she call father the very man she had scorned? And yet another voice whispered deep within her, soft, painful, but undeniable. She remembered the fire in his eyes, the strength in his silence, the way he had fought 3 champions and still stood unbroken. Was that not strength? Was that not worth respect? Her chest ached with confusion, torn between the pride of her people and the longing of her heart. For years she had asked herself why she was different, why she never truly fit among her own kind. Now the answer had been given to her, but instead of peace, it brought only pain. She turned sharply, her eyes locking onto the warrior again. He still stood in the circle of runes, blood on his arm from the last battle, his body scarred but his presence unshaken. He looked at her, not with judgment, not with pride, but with sorrow. A sorrow that reached deeper than her anger could touch. Her voice broke as she shouted across the hall. Why didn't you fight for me? Why didn't you stay? You call yourself a father, but where were you when I needed one? The warrior's silence stretched before he finally answered, his voice low, filled with pain. I was fighting to return. I was torn away, bound by war, and chains you cannot imagine. Every day I bled, every night I dreamed of coming back. I was not absent by choice, daughter. I was absent because fate is cruel. The princess's lips trembled. She wanted to scream again, to deny him, to push him away. But his words struck deep, echoing in the hollow space inside her chest, the space she had carried all her life. She pressed her hands to her chest as if to hold her heart together. She remembered the nights she had cried quietly, feeling something, missing, something her mother's love could never replace. And now, the missing piece stood before her. But her pride was a chain around her heart. She could not simply accept him. Not yet. She turned her face away, her voice softer, but still, trembling with anger. You cannot expect me to forgive you, not after all these years. You may be my father by blood, but you are a stranger to me. The warrior bowed his head, his voice breaking with quiet regret. I do not ask for forgiveness, not now. I only ask for a chance. To know you. To stand beside you even if you never call me father. That is enough. The court shifted uneasily, nobles exchanging glances, unsure of what to make of such words. Some whispered of weakness, others of strength, but the princess heard only his honesty, and honesty hurt more than lies. Her tears spilled faster, her pride battling her heart. She whispered to herself, what do I do? Do I hate him for the years he was gone? Or do I reach for the father I never had? She fell silent, her body trembling, her heart torn apart by a storm of emotions she could not yet control. The queen watched in silence, her eyes filled with both sorrow and hope. She knew this was the moment her daughter's pride would either shatter or transform into something stronger. And in that silence, the human warrior waited, not with force, not with demand, but with patience, carrying scars that told her he would wait forever if he had to. The chamber was silent, every eye fixed on the princess, waiting for her decision. Her tears had dried, but her heart was still caught between two storms. Her pride as the daughter of a queen, and the aching emptiness of a child who had longed for a father all her life. She stood trembling, her breath shallow, staring at the human warrior. His body bore scars from countless battles, his arm still bleeding from the trial, yet he stood tall, silent, waiting. He did not demand her acceptance. He did not claim her love. He only offered his presence, steady, patient, unbroken. The queen's gaze was firm as she looked at her daughter, her voice calm but heavy with meaning. You can choose to deny him, child, but truth does not change. He is your father. Blood ties cannot be erased by pride. The princess's fists tightened at her sides, her chest rising and falling with sharp breaths. She wanted to scream, to reject him, to hold on to her pride. But the memory of her lonely childhood pressed down on her. The nights when she asked her mother about her father, the mornings when she envied other children who had both parents by their side. Her voice broke as she finally spoke, trembling. All my life, I thought he abandoned me. I thought I was nothing to him. And now he stands here, asking for nothing but a chance. She turned her face sharply to the warrior, her eyes burning with confusion and anger. Why? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why let me mock you? Why let me laugh at you when you could have spoken the truth? The human warrior's voice was calm, though pain trembled beneath it. Because I wanted to see the strength in you. I wanted to see if you could stand proud, even when you thought you were alone. A father's pride is not in hearing his child's praise, but in watching her fight, even if the fight is against him. The words cut deep. The princess's chest ached as if her heart would break. She remembered the fire in his eyes during the trial, the way he had endured her taunts, not with anger but with patience. He had not mocked her, not once. He had only stood tall. Her tears returned, falling freely now. Then, all this time, you were watching me? You endured my cruelty because you were proud? The warrior stepped closer, his eyes shining with sorrow and hope. Yes, proud. Because I saw a fire in you that mirrored my own. I saw my daughter, even when she did not know me. Her knees weakened, her pride melting under the weight of his words. The court was silent, nobles holding their breath, guards frozen like statues, all waiting for what she would say. The princess finally lowered her head, her voice a whisper that broke the silence. Father, the words slipped from her lips like a fragile bird taking flight. The hall gasped, the sound rippling like thunder through the nobles, but the warrior's eyes closed, his breath trembling, a tear slipping down his scarred cheek. He stepped forward, slowly, not rushing, not forcing, until he stood before her. He lifted his hand, scarred and rough, and for a moment hesitated. Then, gently, he placed it on her shoulder. The princess did not pull away. Her head bowed, her tears dripping onto his hand, her voice trembling. "I hated you for not being there. But I wanted you all along. I wanted a father. I just never knew it would be you." The warrior bent slightly, his forehead touching hers, his voice breaking with quiet strength. "And I wanted nothing more than to be by your side. Now, I am here, and I will never leave again." The queen watched with pride, her eyes soft, her lips finally curving into a faint smile. She had carried the secret for years, waiting for the moment her daughter would see the truth with her own eyes. The court, once filled with laughter and mockery, now bowed their heads in respect. No one dared to laugh. No one dared to speak. The bond between father and daughter had silenced them all. The princess finally lifted her head, her tears still falling, but her voice stronger than before. "Then stand with me, father, not as a stranger, not as a human, but as the warrior who never broke, and as the father I will no longer deny." The warrior smiled, faint but real, the first true smile he had shown in the hall. He straightened, his voice strong. "I will stand with you until my last breath. That is my promise." The queen raised her hand once more, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Let it be known, this man is not only a warrior of earth, he is bound by blood to our house, and he will be honored as such." The nobles bowed, some unwilling, some with respect, but none dared to question the queen's word. The princess stood beside the warrior now, no longer mocking, no longer laughing. Her heart still carried pain, but for the first time in her life it also carried warmth. She had found not only the truth, but a bond she thought she would never have. And in that moment, the human warrior did not need a throne, nor riches, nor glory. His redemption was complete, for he had gained the only treasure he had ever sought, the love of his daughter.